welcome back to the deep dive. If you're listening to this, you're probably a little tired of the sanitized safety first narrative
The one that gets pushed everywhere.
everywhere. Corporate boardrooms, mainstream news. Well, today we are doing something different. We are looking at a text that is, well, it's unapologetic, it's controversial, and
And it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable.
it really is. But before we get into it, I need you to do something for us right now. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications.
It really helps.
It does. We're bringing you deep dives the algorithm probably doesn't want you to see, so you got to help us keep the signal strong.
That's right. So today we are looking at the ebook 90s Hong Kong Freewheeling Boom Times with Freedom and Enterprise by Conrad Reicher. And let me just say the title. It doesn't even begin to cover it. This is not a history lesson about trade tariffs.
No, not at all. It's more like a manifesto. And look, it's available right now on Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be straight with you. You need to go buy this thing.
Yeah, we can only cover so much.
Exactly. The charts, the data, the raw stories in there. You want the full, uncensored experience? Go get it. Because Riker isn't just talking about economics. He's arguing that Hong Kong's explosive rise in the 90s, it wasn't just about policy. It was about biology.
It's a fascinating premise, really. His core thesis is that the skyline of Hong Kong, that dense vertical concrete jungle.
It wasn't built by committees.
Exactly, not by HR departments. It was built by raw masculine drive. He calls it an engine fueled by unapologetic testosterone before the world got, in his words, soft.
He frames the whole book as a way to understand our institutions before they were captured. That's the phrase he uses.
Captured by feminists and Marxists.
Yeah. So the mission of this deep dive is to offer what the author calls a red pill reality check.
It's really asking you, the listener, do you remember what the world looked like before we decided that safety was the only virtue?
A world without sensitivity seminars.
Right, and Riker argues that 90s Hong Kong was the last bastion of that, of pure meritocratic masculine genius, a place where men competed, conquered, and created without worrying about microaggressions.
Let's get right into the hardware then. Because Riker doesn't start this in a boardroom at HSBC.
No, he starts it way back in the jungle.
Chapter 1B, biological blueprint.
Right. He's trying to establish that this drive to build empires isn't some social construct. It's hardwired. He tells the story of Mike, a chimp in the Gombe forest. Now, Mike wasn't the biggest chimp. He wasn't the strongest.
So in a straight-up fight, he'd probably lose.
So how does he become the alpha?
Innovation.
Innovation driven by a desire to dominate. He finds these empty kerosene cans left behind by researchers, and he figures out that if he bangs them together while he's charging,
He creates this terrifying industrial noise.
he scares the absolute hell out of the other males. It's strategic intimidation.
And Riker's point is that that is the root of economics. It's not about being nice.
Wow.
It's about leveraging tools to dominate a hierarchy. And he pivots this straight into human biology.
Oh, yeah.
There's a study he cites from a Yale behavior lab that, honestly, I had to read it twice.
The pain study.
Yeah. Break that down for us, because the difference there between the sexes was stark.
So they have participants doing a basic gambling task. Risk reward, simple enough. But then they introduce a threat.
Physical pain.
Electric shock.
Shocks.
Actual shocks. And here's where it gets interesting. When the threat of pain was introduced, the women in the study, they largely quit. They opted out. The risk wasn't worth the pain.
Which makes sense from a survival standpoint.
Sure. But the men took 70% more risks when they were threatened with pain.
70% more.
The threat acted as a stimulant. Riker's argument is that men are biologically hardwired to lean into danger when the stakes are high. Pain focuses the male mind.
And he connects this directly to the trading floor. The University of Chicago study on traders.
This is the morning buzz theory.
Exactly.
They found that traders with high morning testosterone levels made, 20% more money by the end of the day.
Because testosterone correlates with risk tolerance, rapid processing.
But Riker contrasts this with a really specific anecdote. A trader they called the Bull.
The Bull. This guy was a legend in the book, pulling in like 400 grand a day. An absolute killer.
Until biology caught up with him, but in a different way. He takes paternity leave.
Steps away from the fight.
He's holding his newborn, his sleep cycle's a mess, and biologically, his testosterone drops to facilitate caregiving.
Which is just nature doing its thing.
Right, but in the arena of high-stakes capitalism, it's fatal. He comes back to the floor, And he doesn't just have a bad day, he loses $2 million.
Because the edge was gone.
The chemical aggression he needed to hold his position, it was gone. Riker calls this the estrogen versus enterprise conflict.
He says estrogen inhibits spatial aggression.
And you need spatial aggression to visualize a trade, or to pivot to the physical world, to visualize a skyscraper.
This leads to one of the most provocative ideas in the book for me, the anthracite paradox.
It's a heavy term.
Yeah, Riker is basically highlighting the hypocrisy of modern society. We sit in air-conditioned rooms talking about how toxic male aggression is. We demonize it. But civilization absolutely relies on that exact same aggression to keep the lights on.
He talks about the dirty jobs, the invisible workforce.
94% of fatal occupational injuries happen to men.
We're talking oil rigs, deep sea fishing, high voltage line repair, firefighting. Riker's point is simple. You can't have the safety of civilization without men who are willing to die to maintain it.
And he argues that vulnerability is basically sabotage. He really goes after this modern idea of the empathetic leader.
Using Apollo 13 as the perfect counterexample.
Yeah, think about it. The oxygen tank blows. They're drifting in space. Death is imminent. Did Mission Control have a vulnerability check-in?
Did they ask the astronauts to express their fears?
No. They grabbed duct tape.
They grabbed duct tape and used absolute cold stoicism. Riker's argument is, if they'd paused for a feeling session, those men would be dead. Captain Feelings crashes the ship.
Stoicism brings it home. Which brings us to the case study.
1990s Hong Kong.
The place where stoicism and risk met opportunity. This is really the meat of the book.
The concrete jungle. Riker paints it so vividly. This wasn't a city built by OSHA regulations. It was built by men dangling from bamboo scaffolds.
That image of the bamboo scaffold it really stuck with me.
It's his central metaphor. There's a quote in the book. It's something like, women complain about glass ceilings, but they've never hung off one at 800 meters fixing rebar.
He talks about the construction of the Bank of China Tower. He says crews were pouring concrete for 53 hours straight.
53 hours without a break. That's pure endurance.
It's a flow state, but a different kind.
Driven by testosterone and necessity. And it wasn't just construction, it was the whole mindset during the 97 handover. Remember, the British were leaving, the Chinese communists were coming in, the diplomats were terrified.
But the men on the street weren't waiting around for the UN to save them.
No. Riker tells this amazing story of Old Chan, a fishmonger. When the police presence just faded away, he didn't call for help. He organized a bamboo militia.
A bamboo militia.
Yeah, neighborhood guys, grabbing construction poles and just patrolling their own streets. Riker calls it the protective instinct. The idea that order isn't given to you by a government, it's enforced by men willing to stand on a corner with a stick.
And talk about sweat equity. The story of Uncle Six Chan, this is the one that grossed me out, but it proved the point perfectly.
The cockroach farmer.
The guy was breeding cockroaches under the floorboards of a tenement building.
To make cricket flour for bird feed, it sounds horrific, but it was pure capitalism. He bred roaches to buy real estate in Wan Chai.
I mean, Riker uses that to show that in a true free market, there is no job too dirty if it leads to ownership. Men did what had to be done.
It's this idea of risk and reward on steroids. There's another story about a trader who lost $10 million before noon.
And didn't even blink.
Right. Most people would be in therapy for life. This guy goes to lunch, comes back, and makes double that by the closing bell.
And Riker ties this into the cultural backdrop, right? The triads.
He argues that the triad initiations, blood oaths, the threat of literally cutting fingers.
It created a loyalty structure.
A loyalty structure far more efficient than any modern employment contract. It was brutal, but it worked.
And that's the thesis. It worked because it aligned with male biology. Hierarchical, high stakes, and violent consequences for failure.
So we have this picture of high testosterone success, but then the book pivots. Section 3 is called The Capture of Institutions.
This is where the engine gets shut down.
This is the vulnerability trap. Riker shifts his focus to modern corporate culture. He uses the Boeing 737 MAX disaster as his prime example of what happens when you prioritize ideology over competence.
He's actually claiming diversity quotas played a role there.
He's claiming that a culture that ignores alarmist, disagreeable male engineers in favor of consensus and inclusivity, it leads to disaster. He argues meritocracy was replaced by ideology.
When you prioritize feelings over physics, planes fall out of the sky.
He also mentions the Silicon Valley mutiny.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's this little piece of underground history, engineers creating browser extensions to filter out HR buzzwords. So instead of seeing, I feel triggered in an email,
The extension were translated to, My code has exceptions.
It's hilarious, but it shows this massive disconnect. It's a pushback against what Riker calls the double bind for men.
The double bind is the trap modern men are in.
Right. You're vilified for having ambition. You're called toxic or patriarchal, but you're despised if you hesitate. You're attacked for being an alpha, but no one respects you if you act like a beta.
And he backs this up with the so-called Sweeten experiment.
The paternal daycare centers. Riker claims 78% of them collapsed. The theory was, hey, men can nurture just like women.
But the book argues the toddlers were starving for maternal attachment, not paternal play. It really challenges the whole idea that gender is just a social construct.
And Riker says the media is feeding this confusion, the masculinity mirage.
He compares movies like Frozen, where male leadership is shown as villainy, to 90s Hong Kong cinema.
Hard-boiled. The killer.
He calls it competence porn.
Exactly. Just seeing a man who is good at what he does, protecting people, getting the job done, he contrasts that with the Detroit collapse. He traces the fall of Detroit not just to economics, but to the removal of the father from the home.
The shift from industrial fatherhood to welfare-subsidized single motherhood.
And the crime statistics that followed, Riker is essentially saying, when you remove the masculine protector role, you don't get a utopia, you get chaos.
Which leads us to the most personal battlefield for a lot of guys listening, the family court system. Section 4, reproductive realpolitik.
This is the red pill reality the intro promised. Riker just throws out some brutal stats. Mothers winning primary custody 82% of the time, men paying 90% of alimony.
The story of Carlos, the Miami mechanic, that one was heartbreaking.
It's a tragedy. Carlos is facing jail for contempt of court because he can't pay for a child that his ex-wife moved all the way to Alaska.
And he sees the kid, 4 days a year?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He has zero authority, zero influence on how the child is raised, but he has to bankroll the entire operation.
Riker calls it the provider's burden. Without the authority, you're a wallet, not a parent.
And he brings up paternity fraud. He cites a UK statistic that 1 in 25 fathers are raising another man's child and they don't even know it.
1 in 25. That is a terrifying statistic.
And the book links this economic disadvantage to mating dynamics. He talks about the bachelor tax and hypergamy.
He uses the bride price in 90s Hong Kong as an economic signal.
In 90s Hong Kong, a bride price was a transaction. You worked hard, you saved, you proved you were a provider, you got a wife. But he contrasts that with modern Tinder stats,
Women swiping right on only the top 5% of men.
which Riker argues creates an artificial scarcity.
So you have all these average guys working hard, playing by the rules, and they're just invisible.
Invisible, and the result. Men check out. He points to the herbivore men of Japan.
The men who just opt out of the system.
They stop dating, they stop working overtime, they stop buying condos, and the GDP drops because the engine, that testosterone drive, has been turned off.
It's a silent strike. If the game is rigged, why play?
Exactly.
So what's the solution? Because the book doesn't just complain, it has a call to action in chapter 24, reclaiming the mandate.
He advocates for a Spartan mindset, the idea that suffering creates strength. He points to elite brotherhoods, like the Purcellian Club, as ways men have historically bypassed HR red tape to maintain power.
He calls it the Aldous principle.
Reject the vulnerability fetish, stop apologizing, build something that outlives you.
The final advice in the book is so visual. Dogs mark trees, men mark peaks.
Riker argues that the architecture of ambition, like the rivalry between the HSBC building and the Bank of China Tower, is fundamentally about dominance. Those buildings are phallic, they're aggressive, they're dominant, and he says men need to embrace that drive.
That is powerful stuff. So putting it all together, what does this mean for someone listening right now?
Well, I think Riker is arguing that civilization relies on a specific type of male energy, that high testosterone, risk-taking, protective drive. And right now, that energy is being suppressed. So the book is asking you to decide. Do you want a society of safety that stagnates, or a society of conquest that builds empires?
It's the question of the century, isn't it? And here's a thought to leave you with, something Riker touches on, about disposable men. We know the stat, 93% of workplace deaths are men. Society treats men as disposable.
So if you're already expendable, why are you playing it safe?
Exactly. If the world treats you as disposable, shouldn't you leverage that? Take the big risks. If you're going to go down building a skyscraper, go down building an empire.
Use the biology.
Listen, if any of this fired you up, you need to go read the source material. We just scratched the surface. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy the ebook, 90s Hong Kong Freewheeling Boom Times with Freedom and Enterprise.
It is loaded with more stories and data than we could ever cover here. And make sure you follow the author at Conrad Lanker on Substack. He's putting out content that goes even deeper.
Do it now. Like, subscribe, and reignite the fire. Don't apologize for the past. Build the future.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you on the next one.